dark side. Light this bitch up.
Up, everybody. My name is James D. Fiore, and this is Blackballed. Okay, I am pretty pumped up for today's show for a bunch of reasons. First and foremost, I love making people angry for stupid things. One of those stupid things is who I choose to have a guest on this show. I just interviewed Steve Paikin. Steve Paikin is a longtime Canadian journalist. He's been around for about 3 or 4 decades. And I asked him the question, I'm like, if there was a person that you wouldn't interview, who would that person be? And I asked in the context of my guest today. I had a splendid time the last time I talked to this person. I didn't think that there was any hate speech involved in any of the things that we discussed, even if we disagreed on things. And he said to me, if a person is elected to office, they're a legit interview, no matter who it is. And I agree. And I also would like to point out that while I don't know this person personally, I thought she was very pleasant the last time we spoke, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be that same way today. So would you please welcome to the show, her name is Christine Anderson. Christine, how are you?
Fine. I'm doing just fine. How about you?
I'm doing well. I would like to start off this interview with a little bit of transparency and tell you that you were a little hesitant to do the second interview. Why is that?
Well, like I said, whatever I said, you occasionally jumped in there and sort of gave it another spin or jumped to conclusions that had actually nothing to do with what I had said.
Okay, well, I apologize
but
for that.
I think we cleared this up. So I'm happy to be on again. So
good. Well, listen, my job is not to wave a flag of ideology. I would actually prefer if people didn't know my politics at all, because I think really the focus should be on my guest rather than myself. So now what I want to start with, and by the way, I just got to my hotel in Ottawa. I didn't have time to load up all these graphics and videos, but we can just talk about what I want to talk about anyways. And I haven't been able to speak with you since you came to Canada, and you were treated like a rock star. You went to places, people were cheering, you were emotional. What do you think was the reason for such a connection between you and the people that came out to see you?
Well, I was told it was going to be like that, but I simply I did not believe it, to be quite honest. And when I got there and I actually saw what was going on, I was like, oh my God. And I spoke to so many people, and I really made it a point to make time for the people, because that's why I went in the first place. And the number one thing, or the reason I was given by most of the people, they kept telling me I gave them a voice, I validated them. And that got me thinking, if I probably did, without even being aware of that. But if someone, I mean, there were a lot of people even in tears thanking me for validating them. And that is usually something you hear from someone who has been a victim of psychological abuse. And I kind of figured it out at that point. All of this gaslighting that was going on, especially during this so-called pandemic. And here I was, all the way across the ocean. Basically just saying what the people really felt. And I was told I was the only one that would have did that at that point. And there wasn't a single member in the Canadian Parliament who, would have done that at that point anyway. So, I guess I just have to accept that. But this validation, that is really, to be quite frank, it was psychological abuse. And that's what I really accuse all of the governments, especially in the Western democracies. They gaslighted their own people, tried to manipulate them try to isolate them, try to make them feel a small fringe minority. Nobody wants to be in a minority. So this was, I just seriously, that was despicable. The most despicable thing I have, experienced ever
What
since.
was specifically the most despicable thing?
Well, just basically threatening people. You will lose your job if you don't take that mRNA shot, and you are, completely alone. You're a nutcase, pretty much, if you don't do the right thing. You have to show solidarity. So go get your jab. All of this ostracism, this stigmatization of people who, most of them for very, very good reasons, simply refused to take that mRNA shot. And it created a climate within the societies that I, as a German, am all too familiar with. It's the very same. It's literally taken out of the textbook of what happened in Germany in the 30s, a very, very dark period of my history. But I have made it my mission in life to actually learn from history. And only then will I be able to prevent anything like that from ever happening again. But you need to be able to recognize the mechanisms that were deployed back then. And yes, these were the very same mechanisms that they put in place this time around.
I think a lot of people listening will be interested, find it interesting that you would say that. And I'm going to word this the right way because I don't want you to think I am calling you this. But how hard is it for you to hear people in the media, especially, reflexively refer to you as a Nazi, especially being a German? I've always wanted to ask you that because just to preamble this a little bit. I have Jewish friends and they are very careful who they call Nazis because they understand Nazis to have a definition that includes a lot of like oppression and murder and things like that. So I just want to know how it makes you feel as a German woman to be referred to as a Nazi.
Well, at this point, it doesn't do anything with me anymore because I've been slapped with that label for so many times, and you know what? It's this overuse of that term, and it basically renders it meaningless at this point. And just to think,
You won't even say the
anyone
word. I
calling.
notice.
I'm
You
sorry.
won't even say the word Nazi. I notice. You don't want them to. You
No,
don't want them to clip
no,
it, right? I guess.
no, I don't have a problem with that. It's just that, what kind of message are you sending when you call me a Nazi? I mean, just think about, young people, kids even, So now they hear I'm supposed to be a Nazi. They're looking at me, but well, if that is a Nazi, well, they couldn't have been that bad after all. It is actually downplaying the horrific atrocities that the Nazis inflicted on humanity. It's more basically it's making it more harmless to bystanders. And in Germany, that is actually crime to downplay the atrocities that the Nazis inflicted on Germany. So anyone calling me a Nazi should be very careful if he really wants to do that, because he might run into a problem with with our criminal code.
Do you have an issue with that part of the criminal code, just in principle? Not because of
No, I don't.
not because of the Nazi
No,
not
no,
because of
no.
the Nazi part, but just because it's kind of flies in the face of freedom of speech, like being able to like be wrong about something publicly. Like, do you agree with that principle?
The only thing I do see a little critical here is that it pretty much prevents you from asking questions. Anytime you're like bring up that issue or whatever, you're immediately accused of downplaying the atrocities the Nazis inflicted on mankind. So, but if you're not allowed to ask questions or to dig deep into all of this, how did it come about? What were the mechanisms that were in place back then? How did it all happen? And I really have to say, at this point, the ones that are screaming loudest, never again, and fight the beginnings. That's like their slogan. They wouldn't recognize the beginnings if it jumped up and bit them in their faces. And that's like I said, I truly did learn from history. And you have to understand the mechanisms that made it all possible back then. I mean, just think about it. Germany back then, we were, a civilized society. We were scientifically far advanced. We had brought about, poets, literates, I mean, we really were actually a great society, but yet it was possible. It was possible to turn the society into, this, I don't know, monstrous society, whatever, and if it's possible to do it to the German people back then, well, please do not make the mistake of assuming that it could never happen anywhere else. And from where I stand, that's what we've seen in the last 3 years. That's exactly what they did.
And that's one of the reasons why you resonated with that crowd when you came to Canada. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about what happened when you came here, because again, I haven't had a chance to speak with you since you did. And it revolves around this man, Pierre Poilievre. Here, I'll put up a picture of him. There he is. And you met with
I can show you another picture. I hope the people can see this.
Oh, that is.
Isn't that brilliant?
That is hilarious. He's so little. Look at him.
Yeah, well, he is. He is.
Is he that little? Yeah. Okay. Now, this is a weird. This was a weird situation for a lot of us because, first of all, you got shat upon, I guess I would say, by the media and by Pierre Poilievre himself for meeting with sitting Conservative MPs, including Leslyn Lewis, who's a black woman who was accused of meeting with a racist, which I found to be very interesting. Can you? I want to ask you a couple questions that I'm hoping that you'll be really transparent about, because no reporter asked any of these questions in Canada. One of them is, have you ever had any conversations with Pierre Poilievre before or after you visited?
No, I did not.
No. So you didn't have one conversation just to
No.
Did you attempt to?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
And the people that you met with, have you been able to speak with them since you met with them?
I'm sorry, the people
the MPs that you met with, did you have any subsequent conversations with them?
With one of them.
Okay. Can you say which one?
Yes, Leslyn Lewis.
Okay. See, this is what I mean. So why would Leslyn Lewis go back to the trough of racism? Right?
Well, yeah, like I said, we had a lovely luncheon going on, we got along just fine. And I was quite astonished, like a day or 2 days later, to see whatever Poilievre put out there. While it's not clear whether or not he actually did do that, but I mean,
his office did. His office did, and he didn't put it on his social media. He gave it to a reporter.
Right.
So he wanted to have it both ways, I guess you would
right.
say.
So, like I said, we had a really, lovely talk during our lunch appointment, and there wasn't anything going on, that they were appalled about anything I said. On the contrary, they actually agreed on a lot of issues with me. And but like I said, I'm used to that kind of stuff, just being labeled by people that don't know the first thing about me. So I really felt I apologized to Leslyn Lewis for having her gotten into that fix on my account, and she responded. I never even attempted to contact the other two. Because they put it out on their social media. So whatever, I mean, I guess they kind of have to do what is expected of them to remain in position within their party. But that just goes to show they're pushovers, pretty much.
Was the meeting with Max Bernier planned or a subsequent thing that took place because of the blowback of what happened?
No, that actually been lined up. That was planned. So that wasn't something that happened. And yeah, with Maxime, we got along just fine. And it was actually pretty smart that Maxime rose to the occasion. And yeah, I have a lot of respect for him.
Yeah, this is one of those issues. Like it's interesting because I've interviewed Maxime Bernier 4 times. I'm interviewing him again before his by-election in a couple weeks, and I think he's a very nice person. And I see reporters and people in Canada refer to him as a Nazi, and I'm really kind of a little bit tired of it. Not just because I think it's an inflammatory label to give somebody that, that doesn't embody what my Jewish friends would call important characteristics of a Nazi, right? Like, but also because if there is a discrepancy in the amounts of, say, for example, immigration levels. Like I saw Maxime Bernier get called a Nazi because he wants 150,000 immigrants instead of 375,000. And I'm just like, wouldn't a Nazi just say zero? Right?
Yeah, yeah.
What is your position on the amount of immigration that should be coming to Germany? Like, is there a number?
Well, no, there is no number. What is happening in Germany is actually for very, very good reasons. We have an article in our Grundgesetz, in our basic law, in our constitution, if you will, that grants political asylum to people who are being persecuted by their governments for political reasons. But that's it, political reasons. So, for very good reasons, we have this provision within our constitution. Because when you go back, the Jews, they were hated everywhere in the whole world. And here they were in Germany, being led to be slaughtered, and they had no place to turn to because pretty much the rest of the world said, "Now we don't want you either."
Including Canada.
I'm sorry?
Including Canada. We turned boats back.
I know. So, but that is the truth, that the rest of the world doesn't want to know anything about it anymore. They're like kind of, nah, that didn't really happen. Yeah, it did happen. So for very good reasons, we have that provision within our constitution. We will grant political asylum. But with all coming in, they're not claiming political asylum. They are not, you understand what I'm saying? So this provision.
What are they claiming? What are they claiming instead?
Well, they're just, seeking asylum is what they say, but it's not based on political asylum. It's all kinds of things. They're fleeing from war. They're fleeing from, whatever. Now we have this climate refugee thing going on. The Greens are really big on that. So no, I'm terribly sorry. This is an abuse of that very good provision in our constitution to just let any old Joe march into our country. And the very interesting thing is, while this so-called pandemic was going on, anyone was able to step foot into my country, no questions asked. I mean, there was a pandemic going on, a deadly pandemic, remember? So anyone was just, just come on in, no questions asked. But me as a German citizen, I was not allowed to step foot into a restaurant, into a shoe store, into a hairdresser's without showing some kind of a green certificate or whatever. How ridiculous is that? So, and that just goes to show it's an abuse of our constitution to just let anyone march in here. And when you look at our society right now, on an everyday basis, we are having attacks that are conducted via machetes or knifing down. People are being jumped into their backs randomly, just like that. We're talking about gang rapes going on an everyday basis. Yeah, sorry, that's not what I want for my country, and especially the safety of women. We are now talking about safe spaces for women when there is huge events like Volksfest, something like that. They actually provide now shelters where women can flee to in case another 1,000 migrants just happen to gang up on them. Seriously, this is the society we are so proud of? I think not.
Are there statistics about that? Because I'd love to read that, because I keep on We live in a world where there are, in my opinion, we're polarized, obviously, and each side has their narrative and agenda. And we hear things like what you just said, and we also hear things that are like, "Oh, that's a myth." And I'm sitting there in the middle, looking at both sides, going, "I would like to know the numbers. Is there a place,
Well,
a source where I can get numbers?"
well, the data would be available if they cared enough to get the data. But on all of the criminal statistics, they no longer differentiate between migrant or German citizen or whatever. They're just not asking for that data anymore. So to not raise concerns or something like that. So once again, you see this gaslighting is actually going on. So whenever you do read in the newspaper here in Germany that yet another young girl was being, gang raped by, I don't know, 10, 12 guys, it only says 12 men. Seriously? And I'm pretty sure the names of those men weren't like John or Marcus or whatever.
Are you sort of suggesting there's a predisposition for violence with some of the migrants that come over?
No, I'm not saying that. But just look at the cultures they're coming from. Their sex is like a haram over there. So you're not allowed. So if you suppress the sexual need that any human being has, if you suppress it to an extent that you pretty much pay with your life if you do act on it, that just
I think they call that the Catholic. I think they call that the Catholic priest syndrome.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
I was raised Catholic. I think I'm allowed to say that.
Thanks for that. I might use that. Yeah,
well,
you are absolutely right about that. So now here they are. They come into a society where women have equal rights, and they do not have to cover themselves up in black tents or whatever. Yeah, of course they're going nuts.
I want to. You said something about climate change. I thought was interesting. What is your? I probably asked you this before, but I just kind of want to know again. Isn't there is there a gray area between climate change as a hoax and climate change is about to kill us all?
Is there a gray area? Well,
yeah. Like, do you live in that gray area, or do you think it's a hoax?
Well, no. I mean, one thing.
Wait, hold on. Before you say anything, can we just do away with the whole thing of like the climate changes all the time? Because really, what I'm talking about is how pollution impacts the Earth's health and temperature changes. That's kind of what I'm asking.
Right. The thing is, there is climate change. Of course, there is climate change. There's always been climate change. Climate is changing, and it has done so for hundreds of thousands of years. The thing is mankind, or we as humans, are we really responsible for that? And that is, to me, kind of like hubris. Really? We really believe to be responsible. There have been periods.
How can we not?
Our history. There have been periods that have been way warmer than they are now here in Europe. So, and just breaking down the numbers when you look at it. So speaking of Germany, so we contribute like 0.0002% of carbon dioxide, and now we shut down all of our nuclear power plants, which, by the way, were the cleanest power supply we had. So we shut them down because if something would happen at the other end of the world, that could never happen in Germany. So we shut down our nuclear, all of them. Which, by the way, had the highest safety standards, the highest. We shut them down, and now we're buying the nuclear power from France, from Poland, from, God only knows where, we are an industrial nation. We do need power. And if you undermine that, guess what? You will no longer be a player in the industrial world. It's as simple as that. Now they're mandating people. Let me go on. It's so absurd. So up until a couple of years ago, people were told you really should buy, a house to live in to secure your retirement once you're old? Well, a lot of people did. And guess now what happens? Now they have to redo the whole house to live up to the whatever standard the Greens come up with. So people are looking at having to invest in the house they bought so they can have their retirement, like 150, 200,000, $250,000 just to live up to these absurd measures of what the Greens dream up every day. This is ridiculous. It's empowering people, and it's basically making it impossible for anyone to own a house anymore. That's what they're doing.
I think the first part of what you said, I think the line that you said that I was hoping you wouldn't, about how the climate's always changing. I mean, there is something to be said, especially since the Industrial Revolution. We are spewing a lot of things into the atmosphere. We are leaking chemicals into rivers, into oceans, and the plastic situation, and this, that, and the other thing. It's not only about global warming. It is about pollution, right? Like, and I don't think it's hubris to say we've also detonated thousands of nuclear weapons since the 40s, right? And so we are doing things to our climate that are having a pretty profound impact on just the health of the planet. Sometimes I think people get too invested in terms like global warming or climate change. Like it's very easy to come up with the counter argument because of course the climate always changes. It changed after the asteroid wiped out the dinosaurs. It changed after volcanoes erupted. It changed after the Industrial Revolution. It just changes. And I understand that. But it is certainly, we have made a little bit of a mess of this planet. And I think, do you think there needs to be I guess my question is this. Do you think there needs to be a green message that comes from the right that recognizes that the human activity that's been happening for the last 150 years or whatever has contributed to an unhealthy planet and we need to clean that up? Why isn't there that kind of message coming from the right in Western nations?
Okay, so no, in parts I actually agree with you.
What?
Yes, to exploit the planet completely, that is the wrong thing to do. And there have been, ever since the 80s. I mean, here in Germany, the Green Party was founded in the 80s. That was a very important impulse. They actually gave to society. We need to be more considerate of our environment. But leave it to the socialists or whatever. They managed to screw up every good idea. And they have taken it to a point now where it's just utterly ridiculous. It is ideologically so insane, actually. That's what they're doing. So there is no, they do not recognize, okay, we've accomplished this, we've accomplished that. And we are living in a much better environment than we did in the 80s. But with them, enough is never enough. They just keep going and going and going. And just look at the ridiculous thing. So like plastic straws, to have your soda or whatever, they're now banned completely because they polluted the ocean.
Can I just say something before you go on? I'm against all adults using straws. Those are kid things.
But I mean, it's ridiculous. So we no longer are, allowed to use straws, plastic straws, because they pollute the oceans. Look at the billions and billions of these ridiculous face masks that are now polluting the ocean. No one talks about that. The Greens were right on board with that. So, and going back, looking at the Green Party, I mean, in the 80s, they literally chained themselves to every freaking tree to prevent it from being hacked down. Now they're marching in front of the parade, to just take down all of the trees to put up these ridiculous windmills, which are nowhere capable to even supply us with the energy we need. And then there's times, guess what? The sun is not shining and the wind's not blowing. Yeah.
Okay, but the question was whether or not you think that the right needs to come up with a more robust and more publicized plan for the environment. That's my question.
Well, and I actually think we have, but
Can you
it's
tell me
like
what it is?
taking it, to be considerate of the environment and to make right decisions. but it's not a right decision to hack down, I don't know how many square miles of forest to put up ridiculous windmills, which, by the way, disturb the birds, the insects, which are the greens, usually really concerned about. So they're planting like all these little flowers, so the bees, can do their thing. But I mean, seriously.
But what kind of plan should the right be putting out right now? Is my question. Like,
well,
give me something. Give me some of Christine Anderson's ideas about how to fix the environment.
To apply reasonable measures, and reasonable is not to shut down all the nuclear power plants. Why are we not looking into solving the problem that arises with nuclear waste? Why are we not doing that? No, it's one direction only. Get rid of all of the nuclear power plants. But like I said, I mean, look at this. And then they want all the people to ride electric cars. Where is the energy going to come from?
Okay, but give me like 2 Christine Anderson ideas to help the environment. Specific things, not overarching things, but specific things.
First of all, Germany should immediately, once again, take up running nuclear power plants. It's not going to be done, in a day or two, not even in a year or two, because we completely got out of that whole scientific area. So if we started now, we probably would be able to come back to nuclear power plants in 8, 9, 10 years, something like that. So that probably the first thing we should do. And stop putting up these ridiculous windmills, because they're not the solution to a problem. They're actually the cause of many problems we're seeing now. So
I think the Netherlands run their entire train system.
And please stop exploiting all of these children, digging out of the mud all of the minerals we need to buy for the batteries for the electric cars. I mean, the infrastructure isn't there, for God's sakes.
Okay. That's all the time that we have. Listen, I hope I thought there was a robust discussion. I think if I were to just say something about the environment, I really think that if your party and if right-wing parties in Western nations actually came up with specific plans that weren't just about undoing the plans of the last guy, but actually creating something that no one's thought of, or just coming out from a different direction.
You know what? No, just let me say this. We do come up with plans. We have alternative means of solving a lot of problems. The point is this, though: people refuse to even listen to us because guess what? We are Nazis. And any discussion is over at that point. That's what they're doing.
They just found their clip. You just gave them their clip, Christine. You just gave it to them.
No, but it's the truth, So they shut down any debate on anything, because you can't give these people a platform. It's ridiculous.
Well, listen, I'll give you. I'll interview you again. I don't like saying giving a platform because it doesn't make any sense to me.
I know.
This was an interview. I appreciate your time. Christine Anderson, thank you very much for joining us again on Blackballed. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now. All right. Well, I'm at my hotel. It's pretty nice. I don't have much to say about that interview because she wouldn't. It wasn't as informative as I would have liked to be. The one thing I will say that that right-wing politicians have in common is that they often give you, even though I'm not trying to come at this like a reporter in a scrum or anything like that, they answer as if I am, and I find it can be a little frustrating. I thought that interview was, I would say, non-eventful. It wasn't great. It wasn't it wasn't horrible, but there wasn't really much new information unearthed. We learned a little bit about her visit to Canada, that she's never really spoken to Pierre Poilievre, and that Leslie Lewis and her had a subsequent conversation and after the original controversy. So I think that is actually that's my takeaway from the interview. The non-answer of the environment thing is the other takeaway. But the first takeaway is that I think that we should defer to Leslie Lewis if she met and spoke with Christine Anderson and then had a subsequent meet with her or a conversation, that we should defer to her whether or not she sat down with a racist. I don't think that we need to dictate to a black woman, like, especially if you're a white liberal or something like that. I don't think you're supposed to dictate to a black woman what, what is racist. I think Leslie Lewis probably has a pretty good idea, being a black woman, for, as being on the earth as long as she has, what racism is. So I think that we need to understand that that you should not get crucified. That whole guilt by association thing is a right wing concept, and it came out. It probably happened a lot before this, but it came out into the public's ether when Obama had his Reverend Right problem. And the people were trying to say, because he was preaching from the pulpit, God damn America, that somehow Barack Obama hates America. And so if Leslie Lewis meets with Christine Anderson, I don't know why anyone would ever give her a problem with that. I think it's ridiculous. I don't think you have to co-sign the people that you meet with. I think you can meet with absolute monsters and still walk away going, no, I'm not the monster. That person was the monster. So anyways, my appreciation to Christine Anderson for joining us today, and we will see you next time on Blackballed.
Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed. Blackballed.